everybody, welcome back to Fantasera Football. It is Thursday. We are kicking off week 5. As always, I'll give you my quarterback starts first. So week 5 starting quarterbacks, I have Jacoby Brissett at Kansas City, I have Matt Ryan at Houston, and I have Kyler Murray at Cincinnati. Jacoby Brissett has been improving each week. He is consistently scoring more than his projected points in fantasy. So far on the season, he's got 10 touchdowns with only 2 interceptions. As always, anybody who's playing the Chiefs is going to end up in a shootout, so I'm expecting him to be throwing the ball a lot and deep downfield. I've said it before, but Matt Ryan is just kind of a disappointment for me because I don't understand how you're surrounded by so much talent, so many offensive weapons, and yet you can go an entire game without throwing a touchdown pass like he did in week 4. However, despite not throwing a touchdown pass, he did still throw for 397 yards and has thrown for over 300 yards in every game this season. So he's still a good fantasy quarterback. I just have higher expectations for him. I'm hoping his breakout game is this week against the Houston Texans. The Texans gave up 370 yards and 2 touchdowns to Drew Brees, 318 yards and 2 touchdowns to Phillip Rivers. So we'll see what Matt Ryan can do. I'm starting to believe a little more in Kyler Murray. I've had him as a sleeper a couple of weeks so far this season, but I have seen continued improvement despite also not throwing a single touchdown pass last week against Seattle. But this week he goes to Cincinnati and takes on the Bengals, who have been awful in pass defense. They're 28th in points allowed, and they gave up 27 points to Steelers backup quarterback Mason Rudolph. Kyler Murray is better than him in my opinion, so I think he has a big game. My first sit at quarterback for week 5 is going to be Gardner Minshew at Carolina. Not to say that I haven't witnessed what's happened or the things that he's been doing. He's practically the Chuck Norris of the NFL, but he is going to Carolina, and the Panthers have the best pass defense in the NFL. They've only allowed 4 touchdowns on the season, have combined that with 4 interceptions. They're also only allowing an average of 157 passing yards per game. So yes, while Gardner Minshew has been impressive, I don't think he has that same type of showing in week 5 at Carolina. If you're thinking about starting Daniel Jones because Golden Tate is back off of his 4-game suspension, I would advise against it. I expected Jones to do better against the Washington Redskins. They won the game, but he only threw for 225 yards, 1 touchdown, and had 2 interceptions. So if he's doing that against a team like the Washington Redskins, even with Golden Tate back, I just don't think he has a great game at home against Minnesota. So I don't really want to call Dak Prescott a sit, but I do need to express that I don't like the matchup this week. The Cowboys are at home against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are ranked 3rd in passing defense, giving up an average of only 188 passing yards per game. Similar to Carolina, they've only allowed 4 passing touchdowns on the season, but have also had 4 interceptions on the season so far. I think that the Cowboys would be smart to run the ball, so I would think that Zeke would have a bigger game than Dak. Again, I can't say sit Dak, but if you have a better matchup for your second quarterback in your fantasy league, it might be worth a shot. My quarterback sleeper for week 5 is Teddy Bridgewater. I think he has the potential to have a huge game against a weaker secondary in Tampa Bay, who just gave up 517 passing yards to Jared Goff. Teddy Bridgewater has also only thrown 1 interception since replacing Drew Brees. If you drafted or traded for Melvin Gordon, obviously he's going to be a start. I still like Austin Eckler, though, just because they are taking on my 0-4 Denver Broncos. So sad. I feel like we're the Miami Dolphins. You're just going to want to start every running back that's playing against them. The Broncos defense has been giving up an average of 149 rushing yards per game. They've allowed 5 rushing touchdowns, and this was when we had linebacker Bradley Chubb, who is now out for the rest of the season with an ACL. So whether you have Melvin Gordon or Austin Eckler, both of them are starts for week 5. I'm starting Le'Veon Bell this week. I realize it's a tough defensive matchup as the Jets are going to Philly. The Eagles are ranked 4th in rushing defense, but the Jets are coming off of a bye week, so Bell has had plenty of time to rest. And I do think that even if Sam Darnold does come back this week, that Le'Veon Bell will carry most of the workload for the Jets. If Damian Williams is still out with a knee injury, I like Chiefs running back Darrell Williams as a start in week 5. Week 3, he had 109 total yards. Week 4, he had 56 total yards and 2 touchdowns. And this week, the Chiefs take on the Indianapolis Colts, who are currently ranked 25th in rush defense. My 3 sits at running back this week are Josh Jacobs at home against Chicago, Ronald Jones at New Orleans, and David Montgomery at Oakland. Very simple. Josh Jacobs hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1 against the Denver Broncos, and right now the Chicago Bears defense are holding opposing running backs to an average of 61.5 yards per game and have only given up 1 rushing touchdown. If you were able to get Ronald Jones either off the waiver wire or through a trade, I do think he was a solid pickup. He's Tampa Bay's best running back right now. However, I don't like the matchup in week 5 against the New Orleans Saints. The Saints have yet to allow an opposing rusher a 100-yard game. The closest running back to come to that was Carlos Hyde. He rushed for 83 yards. And the only 2 running backs who have scored against the Saints are Todd Gurley and Ezekiel Elliott. So while Jones might be a good pickup, I don't put him in that category, and I think he is a sit in week 5. I feel like David Montgomery is hit or miss. He's only got 1 rushing touchdown on the season, and while on the surface it might look like a favorable matchup against the Raiders defense has actually done surprisingly well against the run. So I think if you have a better option than David Montgomery, it's best to keep him on the bench. Carlos Hyde at home against the Atlanta Falcons is my week 5 running back sleeper, more so if you are in standard leagues, as he's not seeing many passing targets. He's yet to have a breakout game, but in 3 of the first 4 weeks, he has either had 85 total yards or a touchdown. Moving on to wide receivers, especially if you're in a PPR league, I really like Cole Beasley in week 5 at Tennessee. Cole Beasley has almost doubled his receptions from week 2. He's continuing to get targets. He hasn't had a receiving touchdown yet, but I think that could change this week as the Titans defense has given up 6 passing touchdowns on the season and are allowing opposing offenses an average of 233 passing yards per game. Broncos wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders has been battling a quad injury recently, so I actually like Courtland Sutton as a start for week 5. Broncos are in LA taking on the Chargers. So far, Courtland Sutton has 22 receptions on 31 targets. He's got 309 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Chargers passing defense has been below average. They've allowed 8 passing touchdowns this season and are giving up an average of 229 passing yards per game. Curtis Samuel will be looking for his 2nd receiving touchdown on the year as the Carolina Panthers host the Jacksonville Jaguars. Samuel has 31 targets on the season. He's had more since quarterback Kyle Allen took over. Right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is ranked 22nd in pass defense, and Jalen Ramsey did not practice again this week, so he is likely to not suit up on Sunday, only making more room for those Carolina wide receivers. I think Curtis Samuel has the potential for a big game. Dede Westbrook is my first sit at wide receiver for the same reason that I said to sit Gardner Minshew. I think the Carolina pass defense is just too tough. I don't think the Jaguars are the ones to bust it open. Despite having scored a touchdown in every game so far this season, I am going to sit Tyrell Williams because the Bears are going to be the toughest defense that the Raiders have faced by far. Very similar to the Panthers, they've only allowed 4 passing touchdowns on the season. They also have 4 interceptions. Williams has a foot injury that could hinder him. Derek Carr got hurt last game, a lower leg injury. He has been cleared, but will he be at 100%? So this week, Tyrell Williams is a sit. Sterling Shepard is my final sit at wide receiver. He has 20 receptions on 25 targets so far this year, but Golden Tate is coming back off of his 4-game suspension, so I would expect Sterling to get less targets than normal. He put up decent numbers against Washington and Tampa Bay, who are below average defenses. I think the Vikings will prove to be more of a challenge. If you don't have a better option, I say leave him in there, but if you do, I think Sterling Shepard is a sit. And finally, to wrap things up, my sleeper at wide receiver is Will Fuller at home against the Atlanta Falcons. Fuller is still looking for his first touchdown of the season. He's got to get it this week. The Falcons have given up 7 passing touchdowns, and they gave up 3 last week to Tennessee. So I think Will Fuller makes a big play, gets his first touchdown of the year. All right, so those are my start, sits, and sleepers for week 5 of Fantasera football. As always, thank you again for watching this video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram at Fantasera Football 2019. If you see this video on Facebook, share it, get it out there. I'll put my 8-leg parlay up on the screen here in just a second. But good luck in all your fantasy leagues, and I'll see you next Thursday.